This time I got a Sony DCRTRV110 Digital 8 camcorder in. This one's got a couple problems. One, it has a black screen on the camera, but the tape section doesn't work either. Doesn't play, throws an error code when you try to rewind. We're going to see if we can get this one working. Let's check it out. So I got a bunch of DCRTRV110s in today to take a look at. By a bunch I mean 3 with different faults, and the guy that owns us is hoping that he can get some or all of them working. So this one here apparently has no camera output, no camera picture. Let's just turn it on. And the nice thing about these cameras is they have the conventional video output, so you don't need to use that special dongle cable that the later cameras did. This one I can plug directly into a monitor and see a picture, if there is a picture to be seen. Of course, my power was out the other night again, and everything is reset on the TV. So it's asking me to go through all the silly settings, which I'm not going to. I'm just going to change inputs, and hopefully it will work. Okay, video 3. That's the output from the camera. Let's see whether it turns on, first of all. That's a good sign. I heard a beep. I see a blue screen, and I see no image from the camera whatsoever. And I'm thinking perhaps it has a stuck iris. Well, we can determine that usually pretty quick by just shining something bright into the lens and see if anything at all lights up on the screen, which I see nothing. So the next thing we do is we kind of give it a bit of a tap, just in case it is the iris that's stuck, because the irises do stick, and it's nice to know going in whether the problem is a stuck iris or something more serious. I still see nothing on the screen, so obviously it's more serious than a stuck iris. The iris is actually wide open. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see it or not, but if I shine a light down there, I can see, if I don't know if I can get it on camera, but I can see the actual imager in there. And nice fingerprints on the lens, eh? Dust that one for a fingerprint or two. But I can see the CCD, and I can see that the lens or the iris is open. And when I shut the when I turn off the power, you'll see it close, and then it zooms back out. Okay, it's closed now. You can actually see the iris is closed. When I turn it on, the iris opened. If I zoom the lens back, now I'm able to see the iris close. There, you saw it close, right? And there the iris is open. So, it's a camera problem. It's not a iris problem. Maybe a power supply problem. That's always a possibility. So I guess we need to tear into this thing and see if we can figure out why it's not working. I guess also I should see if the tape deck works on it before I even get that far. So let's just open this up. I should remember how to do this, as I have one of these cameras. And we'll try a test tape and see whether it plays any type of image. I don't know what's on this tape. There's got to be something on here, I'm sure. But we'll see whether this plays any image whatsoever, either through the built-in screen or through the video out. We'll check the video out. It's a high 8 tape, it's telling me that. Oh, it does have an image, but oh, those heads look bad. I don't know if they're just clogged or did it just eat my tape. I had a bit of an image there for a second, and then it went away. I just got snow on the screen, and now I've got the dreaded error C3123, which means that one of the real sensors isn't working, or the tape just got chewed up. I guess I got to pull it apart. We'll start by removing that tape door. And drop some screws into it while we're at it. Now, for those of you unaware, this was the first digital 8 camera that Sony made. It does have analog playback capabilities, and it only has one speed, SP, which is what they all should have only had, one speed. But because Hitachi also decided that they wanted to make digital 8 cameras, Hitachi decided it was a good idea to put the LP speed on, and then everybody else followed suit. Again, the LP speed is fine if you are going to play the tapes back on the camera that made them. But the problem that happens with the long play speed is that there is no interchangeability or no guaranteed. It's like Wi-Fi, right? No Wi-Fi provider in their right mind is going to guarantee any specific minimum speed. They'll sell you gigabit internet, but you're never going to see it over Wi-Fi. It's never going to happen. Maybe under a perfect lab condition it might, but with all the interference, it's not going to happen. It's the same with the lux rating of cameras. They had them right down as low, or listed as low as 0 lux. Yeah, right. Sure. Anyway, when it came to the digital signals, they only guaranteed playback when you played them on other equipment if it was on the same recorder that made the recording. In other words, if you use the LP speed to make a recording, you had to play it back on the same machine that made the recording to be guaranteed that the tape was going to play. If you lost your camera or broke your camera or bought a new one, well, there's a good chance maybe your tapes would play. Sometimes they did. Many times they didn't. And that was the problem. And that's one of the reasons that Sony kind of shunned on putting the LP speed on DV cameras and digital 8 cameras. Because when you drop the speed like that, you're asking for trouble. Unfortunately, many consumers didn't bother to open the owner's manual and read it. They just took the camera out, charged up the battery, put in the tape, and went to town and started filming their family events and so forth. And there lies the problem. 30 or 40 years later, they're trying to archive their tapes, and they're wondering why their tapes are not playing, because they recorded at a speed that there was no interchangeability that was guaranteed. Now, I know this one I got to pull the left side off before I can get the right side off on this camera, because there's a screw in behind here that has to come off once I've removed the left side. So I'm just kind of removing the final screws, and then I'll pull this thing apart, and then we'll see what the heck is going on, why the camera's not working, and why it's not playing back. Is the heads dirty or are the heads shot? This is old enough that the heads could be shot if it had a lot of hours on it. And getting a replacement head for one of these things would be like winning the lottery. Unless you have a donor camera, you're not getting new parts. And the problem that we face with donor equipment is that the price keeps going up of broken equipment. I see people asking prices that are what a working unit is worth as a parts donor, if you can believe it. Like one of these cameras here, a high 8 camera is worth a couple $100. Like a working high 8 camera is worth a couple $100. A working digital 8 camera, I've seen them selling for between $300 and $500. One of these ones that can play analog tapes, working. Parts ones, I've seen people advertising parts units for a couple $100, which is more than they're worth as a parts unit. Gotta get the nose cone off of this one. It should just pop off. I think I got all the screws. There's one more over here. And then the left side cover will pop off. And there's a couple more connectors that have to be undone. One right here, and then the one back here for the, I think that's for the viewfinder. Could be wrong. Probably am wrong. And the battery cover's got to come out. One more screw. There's always one more screw. Battery cover can come out, and then there's one more screw right down here. I undo that plug and undo the battery connector, power connector back here, and then there's one more screw right here that holds on the grip. And the reason that they have a screw in here is because I think there's a ribbon cable that has to be unplugged, which there is right there. So now this will pop off. All right, now I got the chassis stripped down. First things first, I'm going to give this a once over. We'll check all the connectors, make sure that all the connectors are firmly seated, because that causes a lot of issues on these units, is connectors that are not properly seated. That screw was loose. Where'd that screw come from? I think a screw fell out of this thing. I think we're going to find a chassis screw is missing on this one. I'm pretty sure we're probably going to find a chassis screw. It's probably loose here, right? Oh, it is. Yeah, there's a screw that's missing. It's fallen out of the chassis right here under the circuit board. That's where that extra screw came from. I wonder if that shorted something out and blew something up for the camera. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe we've got a circuit protector that's popped, or an IC that's popped, or a fuse. But we'll figure it out. Look down here, there's another screw that's backed its way out, you see? You can see it right there touching up against the circuit board. That was an issue on these cameras, is that over time, screws work their way loose. So I got to remove the board to get to that to begin with, so we'll start by just removing all the edge connectors here that plug in everything. Carefully, of course, because we know how these will tear if you so much as look at them the wrong way. There's this one here. That one. And then there's that connector, kind of looks like it could be bent, doesn't it? That's where the CCD plugs in. That connector looks bent. See that? Almost like this camera was dropped. I mean, who knows what the history of it is, right? Because the cameras were always subject to abuse. This plugs in underneath. I just don't feel like taking it out. I just want to lift the board out of the way because I need to put these screws back in that have fallen out, like this one right there. That screw has come loose, and there'll be another screw up here that's probably working its way loose too. Yeah, it is, and there should be one more at the back, which is also probably loose. And the one that fell out was actually one that goes through the circuit board right there. Okay, those are back together. Put the board back in for now. Good enough for now. I want to check the fuses on this board here. There are a couple of fuses I want to check. Okay, here are our fuses here. They're marked and identified. It's all the way along here. These are fuses. There's 2 of them that aren't populated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fuses. That's good, 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 good. So the fuses are not blown. That's the bad. Well, I guess that's bad news, because that means there's a fault with the camera. It's something other than a fuse. I was hoping it was going to be like a pop circuit protector, but no such luck. One thing that does kind of jump out at me is this. This connector looks like it's kind of crooked, doesn't it? I'm just going to peel this cover off here. I just want to take a look at this connector. And you know what? There are connections that are broken on this side. I can see them. I can see connections that are open on this side. So if we look down here real close, I can see daylight right down here under this pin. Can you see it? Can we tilt the camera up? Are you able to see the daylight under there? I think you can. I can see daylight. So I don't know whether the camera got bounced or what happened. I don't know the history of it, but that connector certainly is not making a good connection. Put a little bit of flux, liquid flux on there. This is probably a job for the ultra fine solder. Good old Kester 0.5, I think this is. Yeah, 0.5 millimeter. Real thin stuff. I'm still using a tip that's probably too big, but that's what I have. I'm certainly not going to stick the air station in here and try to do this with an air station. Parts everywhere. Alright, I think I may have got that connection, cleaned it up there, and it looks like it's in. I guess I'll find out when I hook up the camera whether I get a picture from it or not. But getting a picture from the camera, that's only one concern, because when I try to play a tape back, it almost looked like the heads were worn out on it. So we'll check the playback circuit. There's no point in fixing the camera if the heads are shot. This camera is owned by a viewer, a local viewer that brought it to me. Okay, got the edge connectors seated. Get the power board back in place. Seat that first, plug that in first before I put the board in place, just because I can flex it a bit. If this stops working, then you don't have any control, because this is the one that goes up to the key switches on the top. So this is kind of an important one to get seated and get it seated correctly. I do have to put the right side panel on, because otherwise I can't eject it, because the eject switch is on here. So I have to put that on first. That's why they're kind of a pain to work on. At least it's got to be plugged in. Right, I don't have to actually attach it, but I have to plug it in. But if I'm going to go to the trouble of plugging it in, well, I guess I can just plug in the other board as well over here, just so that I can operate the unit. Of course, this side has to be plugged in as well, because this has got the power switch on it. So I got to plug all these connectors in first before anything will work. So it's either going to work or we're going to have some magic smoke. One of the two. I still don't have a picture from the camera. I don't know whether the CCD is bad. I get interference when I bring my hand down near this. Oh, the CCD might be bad on this. If I go anywhere near the CCD, I'm picking up interference. This is obviously interference that's coming from the plasma. Let's just see if it plays. Okay, after a bit of head cleaning, using the good old fingernail trick, I was able to get this one to play. The heads were completely clogged. I don't know what the shape they're in right now, but it seems to be that they're playing okay. So that's looking good. Of course, the real pain with these cameras is you gotta have the front cover off, dangling here just so you can get at the heads. That's why I like this design, but I like because the tape goes in the top. If you're using it as a playback machine, you can just leave it sit there on your desktop. But to clean the head, you got to rip it all apart. Whereas the other one, you can just remove the cover and get at it and clean it. That's why I like the bottom feeder, as I call it, that has the head drum up top, just because you can clean it without having to take it apart. But this is looking good for analog play. I don't have the sound plugged in. Let's just make sure the sound plays. And then we'll try digital 8 tape. Okay, that's working. We'll remove this tape, and I will put in a digital 8 tape. We'll see how a digital 8 tape plays on this one. Oh, I have to go back a bit. I have digital 8 on this, but it's only on a bit at the beginning of it. It was a dance recital I did like 20 odd years ago, 23 years ago, and it wouldn't fit on one tape, so I had to go to a second tape. This rewind's working. Could be back to the there we go. Now it'll switch up to the higher head speed. Yeah, that was my logo. Back this up a bit more. They are painfully slow at rewinding, as you can see. That's why we had external rewinders, because rewinding on a camera, it's just ridiculous. It has to spool everything back using the pinch roller and capstan shaft, and it just takes forever. Probably have to kill the music on here too, so I'll have to mute it when I play this. But I just want to make sure it's playing. I know it does. I know it does play because I was able to. I can show this. The breakdancing crowd. So it's playing digital 8 tapes. So playback on this is good. Fellow that owns it does conversion work, so he'll be thrilled at that he's got a machine that will play back tapes. Let's see if we can figure out why the camera's not working. So I can eject the tape. Kind of put this back in place. So that's what I mean. It's kind of a pain because you got to remove all this to get at the heads to clean them. If you're going to use a fingernail trick, you don't need to do that if you're going to put a cleaning tape in. But again, nobody buys cleaning tapes now. They're hard to find. But that works for 8mm. Okay, back to the camera side of things. See if we can get this camera. I don't think I'm going to have much luck though. I think something's popped. With that screw loose in there, dropping around, shorting things out, it's taken something out in here, and it hasn't just taken out a fuse, but something's failed. It could have buggered up the CCD. The fact that I get interference by just bringing my hand near the CCD is a pretty good indicator that that's probably where the fault is the CCD itself. I got more than before. I got more than a black screen. At least I got something off of it now. I don't know whether I've just been working on this connector here. It's right in here where the problem is on this connector. So maybe there's another pin that's not properly connected. I'll have to look at that a little closer and just make sure that every single pin is tacked down. At least I've got something more than I did before, so that's encouraging. I could picture it could be like a movie prop, like seeing through a robot's eyes. I mean, look at the picture. I mean, come on, how cool is that? Tilt up, tilt down, turn, tilt, pan right, pan left. Seeing something, not seeing much, but night shot. Oh, now it looks kind of funky. That looks to be one connection, second from the end here, that looks like it might not be good. But one did look to be that wasn't quite tacked down. So we'll try it again and see if I've improved the picture. I am making progress. I have a picture now. I don't have a very good picture, but I do have a picture. And all I did on this case is I just cleaned the end of the ribbon cable. So I think some rosin may have migrated when I was soldering that connection down. Rosin may have migrated into the connector itself. Because I just cleaned it and put it back in, and well, now I've got something that sort of resembles a really bad picture, like a really bad picture. But and now it's gone back to this. It could be the ribbon cable too. Just wiggle it around a bit here and see whether it does anything. It still could be the CCD that's bad on this, you know. It could be the that edge connector, that ribbon cable may be damaged, but it keeps flicking back and forth between having a somewhat normal picture and having that really bad distorted picture. Now it has a somewhat, I mean, very pixelated picture, but a picture nevertheless. But it just looks like we may have a CCD problem on this, because if there was a data line missing, for example, you'd have a really bad picture like before with all the lines in it, or nothing. There, see? It just went back to that. Now if I flex on this little board here, will it come back? Or is it going to stay like that? Now it's changed a bit. I mean, I guess it still could be. It could be this connector that's bad. But the problem definitely is right in this area here. Try cleaning that a bit more. See if we can get any cleaner down here and clean up the rosin here that might be left behind. That's the problem when you solder HDMI connections and stuff, right? Is that the rosin will wick its way up onto the contact as soon as you put heat to it, and it can cause intermittent connections or cause resistance. And as you see here, this backing tape that's on here has a tendency to come off. These sort of a real pain in the ass. Let the fellow that owns this know that, you know, I got it working as a player. I don't know how much money he wants to spend on getting this working, because I do have 3 others, and I don't know that he's going to even use it as a camera. I think he's just going to use it for playback. So it's playing back now, which is the more important thing, I think, than the camera. But we'll plug this back in again and just see whether I make any progress. And if not, I'm going to reassemble the camera and leave it at that and throw it into the owner's hands as to whether he wants to chase down the camera fault or whether he just wants to use this as a playback machine. I think he only wants to use it as a playback machine. I know if it was mine, if it was me and I was paying to have it serviced, all I'd be caring about is does it play a tape? Because as far as using a digital 8 camera these days, well, there's not really much point in doing that, right? We need them as playback machines. And yeah, I got the same picture as before. I think at this point what I'm going to do is that the same picture? I guess maybe it was better before. But I think what I'll do on this one is I'm going to contact the fellow that owns this and just see what he wants to do, whether he wants to spend any more time on the camera section itself or whether he's good with it as a player. I have to say he brought me 3 of them, so we'll be looking at the other ones in upcoming videos. But I think that now that we've got the playback side of this working, I think we're probably going to leave this one alone. Yeah, the more I look at this, the more I think it's probably that flex cable is not making a good connection inside the socket, or the flex cable itself is damaged. It seems to be that's where the fault is. If I move it around a bit, the picture changes, but it doesn't get any better than that. Again, it still could be the CCD is bad. You see? I just touched it. So I'm just touching the back side of the imager board here, like this, and now the picture goes all bad. It's either this ribbon cable or something on the CCD board here is not right. It could be could be this connector, or this connector down here. That's what I'm thinking. Or even it could even just be this. It could be this ribbon cable itself is bad, just because well, these things do cause so much problems. Doesn't take much. Just a little bit of dirt on there is all it takes, and then you have a signal that the timing is incorrect, or the level is incorrect slightly, and the CCD just won't work properly. And these connectors give a lot of problem. That's why they tape them in place on a lot of these. They put that fabric tape over top to hold the connector in, because just vibration and stuff would cause them to come loose. And then you'd end up with all kinds of weird problems. So if you get any contamination inside these connectors, it can really cause some problems. But anyway, I'm going to leave it at this. Put this unit back together. Make sure it still plays, obviously, because at least before he didn't have a camera that would play. It was coming up with that error code, what was it, 3122, I think, and it wouldn't play, and now it does. Also, it had a black screen. It has a picture now, it just doesn't. Everything strobes. It's good for special effects. You want to have something that looks really weird. If you want to shoot pictures of something that looks really weird, this will do it. As you can see, you can make out what's there, but it's either a connection problem, leakage, or the CCD itself could be bad as well. It could be either one, but it's doing more than it did before, that's for sure. But again, if I just so much as touch this board, it'll just go off. I think now it's not doing it. Oh, there it goes. You see? Just so much as touch it, and it goes off. So it doesn't take much. Anyway, time to throw this one together. Okay, I'm going to play back a digital 8 tape, and then we'll put an analog tape in just to verify that analog and digital work. So this is the digital 8 tape, and as you can see, that's working. I'll make sure I got sound. Okay, we have sound on that one. I'm going to try a regular 8mm tape. Make sure that it can play back analog as well, and then I'm going to call this one done as well as it's going to get done. And if the guy that owns it wants to start chasing down that camera fault, then maybe we'll revisit this, but I think he probably is going to leave it as it is, because for a playback machine, as I say, the fellow is also in the archiving business, so playback is what is important, to transfer people's tapes to digital, and that works on this one. And that is really what most people are really after, is just to make sure that the playback circuits work. So I'm going to leave it at that and say this one here is fixed. It's working as well as can be expected. At least it plays tapes back now, which is something that it didn't do when I started, because it was throwing that error code, and that would have been due to the connectors on the bottom and that screw that had come loose and was shorting out. That might have something to do with the camera section too. I forgot about that. There might be a problem caused by that screw that was loose, that had fallen out of the chassis. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.